Okay, everyone, I am just beside myself excited to introduce Andy Storch today. He's got a great new book out. We've got our own copy in the house here, and we've been reading it back and forth. Own Your Career, Own Your Life. Fantastic book. Andy's podcast is fantastic as well, and his group he's got, his think tank he's got is fantastic. So we are really privileged to have Andy's time here today to speak to us about some of the topics from his book and from his life. Andy, I'm going to hand it over to you and let it go. And I'm just really excited to hear what you have to say to us today. So thanks, Andy, and take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate that. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Seems like sound's coming across. All right. Well, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it. And you mentioned I have a great podcast, and that is, of course, one of the reasons for that is, Brandon, you have been a guest on my podcast. So totally enhance the value. Today, we are talking about owning your career and owning your life. I plan on giving you a crash course since we only have about 25 minutes. Quick overview, my thoughts on the best ways to think about owning your career and preparing for the future, to stop drifting and really take control of your future, which is the tagline from my book. And of course, you can grab the book. It's available on Amazon and from other booksellers if you want to get a deeper dive. But let me give you the overview today. And I'm going to go ahead and advance my slide here. So really quickly about me, I'm a talent development consultant, author, podcaster, facilitator, connector. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a friend. I host 2 podcasts, one of which is called the Talent Development Hot Seat, which Brandon has been a guest on in the past. And I've had many different great talent development leaders, thought leaders on there. And I also host a membership community called the Talent Development Think Tank, where we bring talent development professionals together on a regular basis to connect, to learn, to share, and to grow. And that was an offshoot of a conference that I hosted a year ago with a friend of mine called the Talent Development Think Tank, back when we used to be able to have real conferences in person. That was in January 2020. And then last year, at the end of 2020, I published this book, Own Your Career, Own Your Life. So let me get into the basics here of how to own your career. Now, many of you, you're watching this, we've all had our own unique careers, our unique journeys. And this is not about feeling any type of guilt for anything we've done in the past. It's giving you, how should I be thinking about owning my career going forward? Wherever you are, however old you are, however far along in your career, we can all benefit from stopping and thinking about some of these things. So number one, I'm going to give you my 6 steps to owning your career. And we're going to go through this fairly quickly. I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So number one is to set a vision and goals. And it sounds simple, but it's amazing how most people don't really have an idea of where they're going with their career. They don't really think about it. They kind of are drifting along, waiting for their manager to give them instructions, tell them where to go, for friends or colleagues, maybe even their parents. All of us got into careers for different reasons. Maybe it was happenstance or accidental, like a lot of the jobs I got into early on. Maybe it was your parents saying, hey, you got to go do this, or a friend recommending something. So again, it's not about changing the past. This is about setting a vision and taking ownership for the future. And what that looks like is doing reflection on who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your values. I highly recommend connecting with your values. If you haven't done a values exercise before, find one and figure out, hey, what are your top values? What are your top priorities in life? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you love doing? What do you hate doing? If you're in a job now, what do you like about it? And what do you not like about it? And think about, what would you really love doing in the future? And it might be the same job that you have now. This is not about necessarily changing. It might be that you love what you do and you want to get promoted up the ladder or grow the career or business that you're in. It might be that you want to make a change. Maybe you work in talent development now, but you've thought about trying your hand at finance or marketing, and that's okay. Or getting into a different specialty within HR. There's no wrong answers. The goal here is to set a vision for where you'd like to get to in the future. And the reason I recommend that is not because it's something set in stone and you have to get there and you should be disappointed if you don't, because we know things are going to change. We're going to talk about that. But the reason is it makes it a lot easier for you to set goals, milestones and goals to help you achieve that vision and get to where you want in your career. And number two is it's really helpful when tough decisions come up. And you've probably experienced some of these throughout your career. Maybe a recruiter calls you with a new opportunity. One of your colleagues leaves to go to a new company and says, hey, why don't you come over here with me and take this job? Or maybe you get laid off, like a lot of people did throughout 2020. Over the last 8-9 months, a lot of people have lost their jobs and found themselves looking for something else. And you're often faced with a decision at that point. Do you take that job interview? Do you apply for that next job? What type of job do you go after? And the more clarity you have on where you'd like to go with your career, the easier it's going to be to make that decision. And I'll give you an example. I used to be working in corporate America. I now run my own business. And last year, a pretty prominent person in the HR community, pretty sure most of you watching would know his name, approached me about potentially working with him to help him grow his business. And it sounded like a phenomenal opportunity, but it was not aligned with my goal for where I wanted to go with my career and my business. And so after taking a couple of days to think about it, I turned him down, and I knew I was making the right decision. If I didn't have clarity on where I was going with my career, then I would have agonized about that decision for probably days or weeks, probably wasted more of his time as well as mine. So the more clarity you have, the more certainty you have in where you're going, the easier it will be for you to get there. And that's where those goals come in. So I'm big on setting that long-term vision and then breaking it down into goals that are going to help you get there. Who do you need to know? What do you need to learn? What projects do you need to get engaged in? What type of education do you need? Do you need any certifications? And then set goals for how you're going to achieve those. You can do the same thing in your personal life as well. But we're talking about career today as well. We're talking about careers today. So I want to make sure that you set those. The bonus is if you have a purpose that you can connect to, make sure these things are aligned with your purpose and your values as well, because a lot of people get miserable in their careers when there's a mismatch with their values and their priorities and their purpose. So if you have that, think about what it is. If you don't, you can do some more thinking on it. I have some guidance in my book on how to do that. You can go get Simon Sinek's classic, Find Your Why, and think more about what your purpose is and how that drives you in your career. So, all right, now we have our vision and we have our goals. How do we prepare for the future? How do we move ourselves along and find more career success? Well, the first thing, it's number 2 here on the slide, is to keep learning. Now, this is something that I don't need to talk very much about for all of you here in the L&D community. You know the value and the power of learning. And yet, so many people, even in L&D, are in reaction mode all the time and don't really make much time for continuous learning. And if you've ever heard the old metaphor about sharpening the saw, this was in Stephen Covey's classic book, The Seven... I'm drawing a blank on the book now. The 7 Principles of Highly Effective People talked about the importance of sharpening the saw. Abraham Lincoln talked about this a long time ago as well. There's a tendency to want to just cut down trees all day long to keep up with everything coming at you. But you need to take time to educate yourself, to sharpen your mental saw, just like you do for your people. So do you make time for reading? Do you make time to take online courses? Do you make time to attend online summits like this one? And a lot of you are doing that today. So I appreciate you being here and investing time in yourself and your own learning, because I'm sure all of you have millions of other things that you could be doing, right? But yeah, I just saw a comment there from Kim. Guilty. L&D people don't find time. And I've been working with L&D clients for nearly 10 years, and I've seen it. They'll put the program together and then sit in the back and just keep doing all their project management work and not even really tune in for the program that they put together for these hypo managers or people in the organization. So make sure you take that time for continuous learning, because you never know what the future might bring. You think about the future of work. I've heard this before, and I've said it many times, that the rate of change is faster today than it has ever been before, and yet it's slower today than it will ever be in the future, which means our jobs are changing, our companies are changing, our industries are changing all the time. And just look what happened in 2020 and think about your job and how it might not exist in 5 or 10 years. It might be replaced by something completely different. So you've got to keep learning. And whether that's reading books, listening to podcasts, taking courses, following people on LinkedIn, doing everything you can, going back to school to keep learning and keep educating yourself. We can't rely on that one degree we got 10, 20, 30 years ago and think it's going to help us sustain ourselves through our career, right? So that's keep learning. We all know the importance of that. Number 3 is build your network. This is one of the most underrated things in advancing your career that I can think of. I started getting really serious about building my network in 2005 when I read a book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. It has served me very well. Almost every job and business opportunity I've gotten in my career has come from relationships, people I know, conversations. And many of you might look back and say, yeah, you know what? The last couple of jobs I got was an introduction from a friend or a former colleague or whatever it may be. So don't underestimate the power of building your network. I wrote 2 chapters about this in my book because I think it is so important, so powerful. If you're in the middle of a career transition, you're thinking you might want to take a different job in the future, the best thing you can do is go out and dig your well before you're thirsty, start building that network. And what does that look like? Go back to that vision we talked about from number 1. What's that job that you want to get into or that business you want to start long term? Who are some of the key players that could help you? And can you go out and meet some of those people? You know, if one day you want to be a chief learning officer, can you start connecting with people who are in that type of role or have been in that role or are also aspiring to that role and ask if, you know, you can get a coffee with them and just chat? Oh, sorry, a little bit of a cough. So yeah, think about the people that could help you in that career and how they could help you get there. And you're not asking them for anything other than some advice. Can we network? Can we get a virtual coffee? Can we chat for 20 minutes? So I can just ask you questions about your career and you're going to learn tons from them and you never know where it might lead. There's a lot of benefits that can come from that. So dig your well before you're thirsty. Start building your network now. Excuse me, a little congested today. Don't wait until you get laid off or you lose that job or you're desperate because then it becomes a lot harder. Number 4 is build your Number 4 is build your personal brand. And now what is a personal brand? Some of you may have not really thought about this. Some of maybe you have. For me, it's very simple. A personal brand is simply your reputation out in the marketplace. What do people think of you when you're not around? What do people say about you when you're not around? And this is created by how you show up at work, your personality, your attitude, what types of projects you take on, how hard you work. Are you collaborative? Are you a team player? Are you selfish? Are you quiet? All these things factor in with your personal brand, your reputation within your company. And then you've got your reputation in the marketplace, which comes from content that you might be sharing on social media, how you interact with people on LinkedIn and friends in your network, how you show up at virtual summits and conferences. All these things can impact your reputation and your personal brand. And I'm not saying you should make something up. I'm always a fan of authenticity. I am who I am everywhere I go, whether it's on my podcast, on LinkedIn, here, or out with friends. But you can be intentional about how you show up in the world. You can think about how you show up, what types of projects you take on, the types of people you work with, how you treat them, how well you collaborate. And when you think about it, let's say there's a new project or a new role available in a company, and the managers thinking about hiring someone for this role are looking at 2 internal candidates. One, Jonathan, who's highly qualified, highly experienced, but he kind of keeps to himself. He's a little bit moody. He's not very collaborative. He can be kind of selfish. He doesn't really care to help other people. And then you've got, say, Jessica, who is maybe not quite as experienced, but she's just so collaborative. She's fun to work with. She's energetic. She's a go-getter. You know, who are you going to hire for that job? Most people are going to go for the one who has the better reputation, even if they don't have as much experience, right? So this is why you got to think about and be intentional about that. All right. So we talked about setting a vision. We talked about the value of continuous learning, building your network, building your brand. I see there's a lot of great comments in here. I can't wait to go back and read some of these. Let me get to our last 2. So hopefully we have time for some questions. Number 5, mindset is everything. You know, we don't think about this from a career perspective, but your mindset and perspective affect the way you see the world and approach every goal and challenge you have. And when you believe, like I strongly do, that things happen for you instead of to you, the world opens up and becomes a much better place. So when you're going after big goals, and you're thinking about how to go out and achieve your goals, think about how can you take full responsibility and turn challenges into opportunities. So anything that happens, there are a lot of things outside of our control, but when you focus most of your energy on what's in your control, I find that people are a lot more happy, a lot more fulfilled just by taking that big step. So get out of the victim mindset, get into more of an abundance mindset, a growth mindset. So if you're familiar with the book Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford, that book was a game changer for me as a career professional, as an entrepreneur, and as a father. And I try to approach everything with a growth mindset. And I always recommend that because, you're setting this big vision, you're setting goals, you're going out and networking. You are going to make mistakes and things are not going to work out as planned. And when they do, or when they don't, you've got to be willing to pivot, right? Be willing to make a shift, be willing to make a change because challenges will come up. Things will not always go perfectly. And we've got to have that growth mindset approach instead of like getting into the victim mindset and going, oh, why does this stuff always happen to me? Think about how can I learn from this? What silver linings are there, right? When COVID came up, it completely shut down my business. My whole business was selling and running in-person training programs. And many of you were probably in a position like that, right? And it changed everything for us. Instead of wallowing in that, think about, okay, well, what does this make possible? How do we pivot? And in my book, I share 3 important questions that you can ask when things don't go your way, when you're facing a challenge. And I can share a resource for you to download these. But number 1 is, what is this? What's great about this? So there could be something good. You're just not seeing the silver linings. Number 2 is, what can I learn from this? And number 3 is, what does this make possible? So when those challenges come up, they might open up new opportunities that we just never imagined or never anticipated. So that is my 6 steps to owning your career. 3 quick takeaways. Number 1 is be intentional. Take control and own your own career in your life. Don't wait for anybody else to tell you what to do or where to go with your career. You are in the driver's seat. Nobody cares more about your career than you do. Number 2, prepare for the future. Things are always changing. So you've got to prepare for the future by investing in continuous learning, building your network, and building your personal brand. And number 3, mindset is everything. So work on your mindset, your approach to things. Read that book, Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. I've got a whole chapter devoted to mindset in my book, Own Your Career, Own Your Life. I think it is huge and can get you through just about anything if you're willing to put the time in it. And finally, remember that nobody cares more about your career than you do, right? Your mom probably cares about you and your career. If you have a spouse or children, they care about you and your career, but nobody cares more about your career than you do. So you've got to be intentional in taking that action and going where you want to go. All right. So if anybody wants to follow me or connect, here's some of my information. On our website, ownyourcareerownyourlife.com, we have some bonus resources, including a download where you can get those 3 questions. And then you've got my email address here. I'm very active on LinkedIn, Instagram, lately on Clubhouse. If any of you are on Clubhouse, I'm hosting a talent development room starting next Tuesday, every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And I've got a couple podcasts, including the Talent Development Hot Seat. All right.
All right, Andy, thank you so much. Great presentation. And quick question, can you talk a little bit about your think tank and how long it's been going on and kind of what are some of the key learnings that's come out of that for you because I know you kicked it off last year, right?
Yeah. So my friend Bennett and I hosted the first conference, the Talent Development Think Tank Conference in January 2020. And the reason we started that was because I had been to a lot of different conferences, and what I saw, most of them to me were not really leveraging. They were a little bit boring, right? They was just kind of stage from stage, speaker after speaker. And I thought we could do something that's a lot more collaborative that could tap into the wisdom of everybody in the room. Because, just like right here today, like, yeah, I've got a book and some great things to say, but I know if I just started sending messages to all of you who are watching, that all of you have some great wisdom, especially in talent development, right? So we wanted to create something more collaborative. So we had a conference where every single session was experiential, except for one. We had Mr. Josh Burson speaking at our event, and we let him just run with his slides, right? But the rest of the sessions were all interactive. And then when COVID hit, we had already sold some tickets to the next one that was supposed to happen, last month, January 2021. And, COVID changed everything, right? And so I wanted to create a resource that was kind of like an ongoing conference where people can continue to network and share with each other. And let me turn this sharing off here if I can. I wanted to create a resource where people could kind of, continue to network and learn and share with each other. So I created this community, membership community early in 2020. And it's been slowly growing. We bring in guest speakers. We have live calls every Wednesday. We bring in guest speakers. We have sessions where we kind of get in breakout rooms and help each other solve challenges. We do speed networking. And for all of it, the goal is bringing people together in talent development to share best practices, learn from each other, and help each other solve real challenges. And people seem to love it.
It is fascinating how sometimes we can become very insular in this world of corporate learning, right?
Yeah.
So it's really good to kind of step outside of yourself and stretch yourself a bit and learn from other types of practices and functions and stuff. If you could just watch one thing that you've learned that stuck with you, that was serendipitous or that you didn't expect. Does anything pop to your mind when you think about that?
Well, one thing that surprised me, and I'm thinking about this, I still need to make some adjustments with the community, is I thought the main benefit might be that I have such a big network and the ability to bring in really great speakers, chief learning officers, and things like that. But I think what people really appreciate the most is being able to just talk with others, in the similar role, doing similar things, and just say, hey, Brandon, what are you working on? What LMS do you use? Do you like it? Do you not? Like some of the biggest questions are like, hey, we're creating a new manager training program. Like, what have you named your programs in the past, right? Like what?
Those things are really helpful. They really are. They're tactical, but helpful.
Yeah, right. And just being able to ask each other stuff, or like one of the questions we have a private Slack group the other day was just like, does anybody like their LMS? And someone was like, I do, but everyone else is like, no. So, just finding out what other people are working on, what's worked and what hasn't. I think there's tons of information out there. You could attend a webinar every day from experts on things, right? People just want to know, like, hey, what's really working? Like, did you try that thing and did it work? And being able to, and then, being able to network and connect with each other. People love that too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming today and sharing your wisdom with us. And you've got multiple channels. I will say his podcast is a library of great talents in our practice. And so I would definitely seek that out. The membership group is interesting as well. Again, Andy, thank you for the time and for sharing your book with us today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for watching, listening. I hope we can do this again sometime and do it in person and make it more interactive and get to know each other, right? But feel free to reach out to me with any questions on any of the social channels, LinkedIn especially. Send me an email, whatever it may be.
All right. Thank you.
Cool.
All right, everyone. Lunchtime. Thanks, Andy. Bye.
All right.